over in the United States, President Donald Trump spoke at a forum of business leaders and global athletes in Miami one day after Democrats dominated the first major election day since he returned to the White House. This month, Trump is also celebrating the one-year anniversary of his re-election to a second term. In his speech, the American leader was supposed to lay down his government's economic achievements so far, but instead hit familiar themes of combating crime, opposing transgender rights, and imposing tough immigration policies. He also said that the U.S., quote, lost a little bit of sovereignty in New York, a clear potshot at New York City's elected mayor, Zohran Mamdani. 34-year-old Mamdani is New York City's first Muslim mayor, as well as the first of South Asian heritage and the first born in Africa.
If you want to see what congressional Democrats wish to do to America, just look at the result of the election in New York, where their party installed a communist as the mayor of the largest city in the nation. The decision facing all Americans could not be more clear. We have a choice between communism and common sense. Today, the United States has the strongest economy, the strongest borders, the strongest military, the strongest friendships, and the strongest spirit of any nation anywhere. We have the greatest economy right now. A lot of people don't see that.
Let's talk about these developments with Gabriel, who is the president of the Northern California chapter of the National Federation of Filipino-American Associations. Gabriel, welcome to The Big Story.
Kamusta po? Magandang gabi, mga kababayan. So happy to be here.
Magandang gabi, Gabriel. Of course, we're all wondering what do we make of this New York vote? It seemed to, at least on the surface, seems to be going against the current grain. Here you have the mayor of one of the most famous cities in the U.S., who was born in Uganda, who is of Indian ethnicity, who's a Muslim, and who was only naturalized in 2018. Baka mamaya yung ICE will ano. And then you have Trump talking about communism. So what do we make of this?
For me, I am beyond ecstatic that Zohran Mamdani is now the mayor-elect of New York City, one of the largest cities in the United States. Almost 10 million people live there. And there's just so much power with being mayor. And for me, that is what I see as the future of the Democratic Party. I do want to clarify that Zohran Mamdani is not a communist. He advocates himself as a democratic socialist, mostly because he believes in expanding that social safety net, such as free buses, city-run grocery stores, and then also increasing taxes by 1 or 2% on the wealthy of New York City. However, of course, Republicans fear that this might lead to an exodus of New York, but I think we all know that it's really hard to necessarily uproot from where you're living. And so I'm really excited. And what made it even more shocking was that the current Democratic establishment, such as Majority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in the U.S. Congress or Senate Leader Chuck Schumer, did not really endorse Mamdani. And so this really was a grassroots progressive movement. And most of the data shows that it's mostly young people between the ages of 18 to 24 who really voted for Zohran. And that is what I would consider that Gen Z blue wave, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what a lot of people are saying, this Democratic quote-unquote sweep of a lot of major states, right? Some moderates made it, it's a referendum on Trump's anniversary in office, if you will. What is your take on all of that and that school of thought?
I would say we have to be very careful in calling this a sort of referendum of sorts. I'm actually currently from California, as you see in my title, and over in California, we have Prop 50, which was the Governor Newsom's redrawing of congressional districts to give California 5 more seats in response to President Trump's sort of advocacy over in Texas to give them 5 more seats by redrawing the congressional maps without having input. And so while we do have sort of propositions or movements such as what Governor Newsom did to sort of equalize the playing field, what we see in Virginia, New Jersey, New York, and even say Minnesota with their first Hmong Asian mayor is that states are realizing that, I wouldn't necessarily call it a referendum or response to Trump, but realizing that with the limited control or opportunity to really advocate for what we want, we have to exercise that 10th Amendment of federalism and advance states' rights to protect the citizens. Because what Republicans love talking about is giving power away from the federal government to the states, and that is what Democrats are trying to use currently against. And so we saw this also around in 2017, 2018, during Trump's midterms back then, but that ended up hurting us again in 2019, where some more Republicans came in. So again, wouldn't necessarily call it a referendum or response necessarily to Trump or rejection of Trump, but rather that Democrats took the opportune time within their own states to combat the Republicanism that's going on in their states.